At a time when many have chosen to be silent, Slovenia raised its voice high to defend the right, the justice, and in rejection of the genocide committed by Israel in the last 2 years against the Palestinian people in Gaza. Slovenia even went further than that. It recognized the state of Palestine and therefore emerged as a different European voice that places human principles above political calculations in a very clear message saying that conscience is still very much alive in some European capitals. We would like to welcome you in this special conversation we are having on Aljazeera Mubasher. I have the pleasure and honor to have with me Her Excellency President of Slovenia, Ms. Nataša Musar. Hello on Aljazeera Mubasher. Welcome to Doha.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to talk to you.
You had a very pioneering position in Slovenia regarding the genocide by the occupation, the Israeli occupation against the Palestinians in Gaza. You cut the economic ties. So why this very much advanced position that we haven't seen by many in the EU, amongst the EU countries?
You know that sometimes I wonder as well why only Slovenia, and then of course we have to mention Ireland and Spain as well, and later on when the General Assembly was taking place in New York, also France and Canada and Australia and Malta, so other countries did join. But to be honest, you know, Slovenia always had a special heart for people who suffer the most. I don't know whether you know the data, but when the war in Bosnia was going on, we accepted 70,000 refugees from Bosnia and Herzegovina, and we were watching the genocide in Srebrenica from a very close position. And this is why the sensibility of Slovenia and my people is so high. And, you know, when Slovenia decided to recognize Palestine, me as a president, I didn't have a single doubt to support this decision of the Slovenian government, and this is the decision of the country, because I think that if we are vocal about the double-state solution, we should recognize both. Israel has a right to exist, it has the right to have the country, but Palestine does the same. You know, it has the right to have its own country. So that was up front. Sometimes, sir, I do hear people, but if you do recognize Palestine, nothing will change. I say, I know I'm not naive, but this is the first step. And the hypocrisy which I do see in the modern world is something that hurts me the most. So you are watching people suffering. You are watching, and I was the first president in the European Union to say, we are watching the genocide and we are quiet and we do not do anything. So Slovenia is not, you know, the superpower on this planet, but we do have a voice. Every single country on this planet has a voice. And I think this was the right decision, and I try to be vocal about what is right. And if I may just add one more sentence, often my colleagues in the European Union are asking me, why are you on the side of Palestine? You know what my answer is? I don't want to be neither on the side of Palestine nor on the side of Israel. I just want to be on the side of humanity. And this is what the world needs more than ever.
Madam President, how have you been watching and observing what is happening, at least after the temporary ceasefire or truce? More than 70,000 people dead, 150,000 injured, thousands of children who were lost, whose members were amputated. So how have you seen all these scenes?
It's devastating. You know, it's devastating for me being a mother, being a woman, being a human being who believes in human rights and dignity above all. And I think that there are a lot of people like me on this planet, but there are not enough politicians who would feel the suffer of the people in Palestine and especially, of course, in Gaza. We need more politicians to understand that the civilian population suffers the most. You said nearly 70,000 people died in this horrible conflict, most of them women and kids. I mean, is that okay for a 21st century? And We have currently more than 65 armed conflicts going on around the globe, which is the highest number after the Second World War. Is this what we want to have on this planet? All the conflicts and all the killings? This is the reason why I'm also really very vocal about the United Nations and the Security Council, you know. Multilateralism is something that I really do believe in. United Nations are there to achieve or to maintain peace and security on this planet. And we failed many times. And in my speech at the General Assembly, I said we did not stop the Holocaust. We did not stop the genocide in Srebrenica. We did not stop the genocide in Rwanda, for example. We are watching what's going on in Sudan. And we are not stopping the genocide in Palestine. I really wish that there would be more wise men and women in politics, more sanity in politics, and we should be aware of one fact. Violence is only going to give birth to more violence. And that's the fact, I'm pretty sure.
You've gone under a lot of criticism because of this position, be it by Israel, by other countries, but apparently you didn't give too much consideration to this Israeli criticism, and you've went along this journey in rejecting what is happening in Gaza. Why is that?
We knew, you know, that there were going to be rejections and that especially Israel is not going to accept the Slovenia's position easily. But deep down, I do know that also a lot of people in Israel feel today that this is not right, what's going on. We should be vocal about it. We should do whatever is necessary to achieve peace in Palestine. And above all, you know, we tackled the double-state solution at the beginning of our interview, and Israel is constantly neglecting this possibility. And what strikes me the most is, okay, if you do not want a double-state solution, which from my point of view is the only solution that we should work for, what's the solution then from your side? I didn't hear, you know, proposals. Of course, now when President Donald Trump intervened in this conflict, we were all really very hopeful about his reactions and his work towards peace. And I would say I'm thankful to United States President that he's working on this topic. But I don't know whether Israel listens. You know, the biggest conflict between Israel and the United States today is what to do with the illegal settlements. You cannot just annex the illegal settlements to Israel. This would be a total neglection of the international law. And President Trump knows that. And he said, annex is not going to be favorized by United States of America. So this is the right step forward. Another right step forward that I do currently see is that United States of America are proposing the resolution of the Security Council, the United Nations. I was pleasantly surprised about this fact. That means that also United States of America do believe that the UN is the right platform to negotiate peace. Now we have 10 days, 14 days to finalize the wording of the resolution. And you know, the Slovenia's proposal was, Slovenia is currently a non-permanent member of the Security Council, and we work heavily on that topic. And Slovenia's proposal was, if the Security Council is going to adopt the resolution, then the conflicting parties and the people in charge should report to the United Nations. So if United Nations are going to adopt the resolution, that means that this resolution is going to be under the auspices of the UN. And in the draft resolution, there was no reporting. And Slovenia said, please, I mean, somebody has to report to the UN. And we have to establish, in a way, a kind of a peacekeeping forces, again, under the auspices of the UN.
Madam President, why haven't we seen a consolidated European Union position when it comes to a genocidal war? We have seen European Union countries who are still exporting arms to Israel. Another EU country or more has welcomed Netanyahu. So even though he's wanted by the ICC, how do you perceive all this?
If you ask me, sir, this is currently the biggest problem of European Union. not being unified in many important international topics. If we are, like, let's say, 99% unified regarding the aggression of Russia in Ukraine, we only have a couple of countries which are not really very keen on this unity, Hungary, Slovakia in some way. But regarding Israel, we are even more disunified than in the case of Russia. Probably some of the reasons are remains of the past, you know, the Second World War, the Holocaust, and the German position, the Austrian position. Probably also the very high ties with Israel, with many countries. But you know what I often say, also to my colleagues, my fellow presidents in European Union, if we are friends, if we are allies, does that mean that we are not going to say what's right and what's wrong? Even if we are friends, we have to be honest to each other. And this is what's going on in Palestine is simply not fair. Not only that it's horrible, Hamas attack was horrible. Let's be honest, every single country, I think, on this planet condemned the Hamas attack. But the measures taken after the Hamas attack were so unproportionate that it hurts me a lot. And what I really do not like inside European Union is a double standard. If we are imposing sanctions to Russia, because we know Russia is the aggressor, Russia violated the UN Charter, why are we so skeptical about imposing sanctions towards Israel? So those double standards are something we have to tackle on a high political level. We have to discuss this. We don't have to, you know, put those problems under the rug, because the problems are there. And to be more unified, the outcome for European Union to be more unified would be stronger European Union. If we are not unified, our voice is not strong enough. You have to be aware of the fact that European Union is the third strongest economy on this planet. But politically wise, we are losing our strength. So we have to work on it, all of us, all 27 member states.
Also, another point regarding Benjamin Netanyahu being submitted to the ICC so that he be held accountable for the genocide in Gaza. Are you keen on this in Slovenia? Is that your position?
First of all, I would like to say that every single country should be aware of one fact. To destroy the International Criminal Court, what some countries are trying to do, would be devastating for the international law. That's the fact. You know, when the International Criminal Court was dealing with the cases in Africa, everybody was applauding to the court. Yes, we need the International Criminal Court. They have to say what's right and what's wrong. Now, when we have politicians from Israel facing trials before the International Criminal Court, then this the same International Criminal Court is neglected. The judges are imposed with sanctions. We do have a Slovenian judge at the International Criminal Court, and she is sanctioned by the United States of America. She's on a list together with Al-Qaeda terrorists, for God's sake. The judge of the International Criminal Court. Is that the way to go forward? No, I would say, and this is not a rhetorical question. We have to answer no, because the courts, either national or international, are the last frontier to tell us what's right and what's wrong. So, and we have to nurture those courts as a diamond.
A certain observation, I feel like you are talking from a human, international human rights perspective, not like a lot of presidents who would rather favor diplomacy and political interests. You're going way beyond these considerations.
That's probably the virus from my previous profession. As you said at the beginning, I am a human rights lawyer by heart and by profession. And maybe I do see things differently than my fellow presidents. And there is also something significant about me, they say. I'm still not used to a diplomatic language, to talk a lot and not tell anything. I want to go straight to the point. I want to say what's right and what's wrong. So this is the way I was taught, I was a journalist for 12 years. You know the profession because you're a journalist. So you have to know how to ask the right questions. But you have to know, if you are asked as a journalist to comment, that you have to be brief and sharp-minded. This is what people want to hear. Not just what people want to hear, but you know that there is a famous saying in the diplomatic world that the diplomat is going to send you to hell the way that you would like to go to hell. So this is, you know, how you can maneuver with words. But if you are in situations like we are facing today in Palestine, in Ukraine, in Sudan, in Yemen, just name it, I mean, is it the diplomatic language the right language to say what's right and what's wrong? Because if you use a diplomatic language, you don't want to be either right or wrong. That's not me. I want to be right. And I know, sir, that I am and my country is on the right side of the history. I do believe in that.
You were a journalist and a TV presenter previously. Would that give us hope that I may become a president one day?
There is always a possibility, sir. The hope dies the last, you know. I never imagined that I would be a president of my country in my life, but, you know, I'm a president now for 3 years. I was never in politics. I was never a member of any political party. Maybe this is the reason it's a bit easier for me, because I don't have to answer to the political leaders, you know, to the president of the parties, because I'm my own. And I think that this position offers me more possibilities to be vocal about the things that matter.
So I have a lot of hope. So we in Aljazeera Mubasher also take a lot of the social media followers' questions regarding this meeting that we had announced. We have more than one such questions. I will start with one by Mr. Said from France, asking you, what is the position of Slovenia vis-à-vis the Russia-Ukraine war, with this conflict having endured for more than years, and how would this have its implications on the EU?
Yeah. It's really the question of security of Europe there on a table. And European Union members and the whole Europe is aware of that fact. But I will assent and stress once again, we know who the aggressor is. We know who violated the UN Charter. We know who's violating the international law. And the most important part of the international law is territorial integrity of every single country on this planet. And the European Union is trying to support Ukraine as much as possible, also Slovenia. But let's be also fair regarding the position towards Russia. I often say publicly that it's not right not to talk to Russia. You have to talk to enemy as well if you want to have peace. And the absurdity of the peace talks, how to end the war in Ukraine, is that now, again, United States stepped in. President Trump thought that he could stop the war in 24 hours. He soon realized that this is not the case. But is President Trump going to negotiate peace and having European security in mind? Again, this is not a rhetorical question. We know the answer. So if you ask me, the biggest mistake of European Union was to stop talking to Russia. So we have to do it. I hope that the so-called silent diplomacy behind, you know, is working. And again, if I may speak about Slovenia, we are discussing also the peacekeeping forces in Ukraine. And a lot of European Union member states are in favor of NATO peacekeeping forces. But this is like raising a red flag before Putin's eyes, you know, because he doesn't have a say in NATO. And Slovenia proposed that the peacekeeping forces should be under the auspices of UN, because Russia has a voice there. So there are many solutions on the table. And this conflict is taking so long already. The fourth year is approaching, you know. Many people died on both sides. And again, it's 21st century, for God's sake. I hope that in the near future, all the conflicts on this planet will stop. You can call me naive. Sometimes I, you know, make a joke about myself and say I sound like Miss Universe, that I want peace on this planet. But I really do want peace on this planet. And I think most of the people on this planet want peace on this planet. And politicians have obligation for 8 billion people living on planet Earth. And there are 206 countries on this planet, 206 countries are members of the International Olympic Committee. That means 206 prime ministers, 206 presidents and some queens and kings among us, 412 politicians have the obligation for 8 billion people. That's the responsibility we do have on our shoulders and the stones in our rucksacks. So we have to take it seriously.
I do not think that anyone listening to us will consider you naive. They will consider you as a human being who respects law. I will go to another question that we received on X. So, in the midst of the economic and political challenges in the Balkans, is there a specific role by Slovenia to support the regional stability and promote cooperation?
Oh, yes. You know that Slovenia was part of ex-Yugoslavia. Before the collapse of Yugoslavia, Slovenia was one of the 6 republics. So we know the region, we know the mentality. I speak the language of the region. And Slovenia is working really very hard for Western Balkan countries to join European Union. It's not an easy process, and it's taking too long. And again, if we are honest to each other, of course those countries who want to enter the European Union, they have to work a lot. They have to transfer, 95,000 pages of acquis communautaire into the national legislation. When Slovenia entered the European Union, it was 80,000 pages of acquis communautaire 22 years ago. But nevertheless, also European Union member states do have the responsibility to speed up the process. And again, I can give you one example what Slovenia is doing in this regard. We are promoting the so-called qualified majority to open certain chapters in negotiation process. Because in many cases, we have seen how one country can block the accession process. Greece for North Macedonia because of the name, and then North Macedonia changed the name, and now Bulgaria stepped in. They want North Macedonia to change the constitution, and the whole process is put on stop. And then there is a fatigue among people to enter the European Union. But being a member of European Union is a peace project. When the godfathers of European Union in 1952 started debating, the European Union, who could have imagined that France and Germany, who were the enemies in the Second World War, would sit together under the same table and establish something strong as European Union is. So European Union is a peace project. Without the Western Balkan countries in European Union, we cannot discuss the peace and stability in the whole Europe. This is why it is also important that Moldova, Georgia, and Ukraine are in this process. And I really do hope that the 27 member states, Slovenia included, are going to find the solutions to speed up the process.
We went through a very long journey from Gaza to Ukraine to the Balkans, etc. But I noticed that you spoke about Sudan. Are you following what's going on in Sudan and the war that has been going for more than 3 years? How do you perceive that?
I think that European media is not focusing a lot on Sudan, but me as a president, of course, I do follow the intelligence information. I do follow foreign media. It's devastating. 25 million people of Sudan are hungry. So famine is there. And the two conflicting parties, two armies, are fighting with each other again on the accounts of civilian people. And again, multilateralism and United Nations, this is the only platform to discuss such problems. Are we doing enough? I'm asking a lot of questions to you today, but I'm answering them immediately after. No, we did not do enough in Sudan. No.
To go back to the ceasefire and Gaza, 3 weeks after the ceasefire, unfortunately, more than 240 people have died from the Palestinians. Famine still persists. Israel still refuses to allow enough humanitarian assistance into Gaza. How do you assess that, assess maybe these are not violations, but how do you perceive that?
Of course there are violations. I mean, I just read the report of UN yesterday before coming to Doha, to Qatar. 107 requests for humanitarian aid were denied by Israelis to enter Palestine. And you know, humanitarian law is an integral part of the international law. How can we leave people without the support? You know, I try to understand what Israelis are saying to us, that they are not going to allow any material which is suitable for W so that the weapons can be made out of it. But still, for God's sake, food for people who are hungry. How come how can you say no? I mean, Slovenia gave a lot of support. It's waiting in Jordan to cross the border. A lot of countries in the European Union are sending support, humanitarian aid for Palestine, and it's blocked. And the ceasefire? Do we really have a ceasefire if people are still dying? Sorry, the ceasefire means stop fighting, stop shooting. Is this so hard? I mean, there is one more sentence I always bear in mind, sir, you know, so that violence will always give birth to violence. I mean, we can today say that, I think that it's the right way to say it, that Hamas must not have a say in a new political era of Palestine. But if people of Palestine are not going to live in prosperity and dignity, we are going to get more angry people. And that's the closed circle we are faced on a daily basis.
Also, regarding your presence here in Doha, let's not forget that the bilateral relations between Slovenia and Qatar, Qatar's role in the mediation to stop the war, even when it comes to some certain dossiers, how do you perceive this role by Qatar and the relations with you as well?
I'm grateful to Qatar and also other Arab countries which are trying to mediate, you know, between Israel and Hamas. And without your support, it would be even worse, I think. Regarding the relationship between Slovenia and Qatar, we are in many fields like-minded countries, you know. And I am especially happy to see that Qatar is also trying to help and is doing an enormous job to return the kids from Russia back to Ukraine. That's another really very important project that Qatar is working on. But my reason here, the reason being here is to boost also the economical cooperation, you know. The bilateral exchange is very modest, and I just returned from the business meeting with Slovenes and Qatari entrepreneurs. And so there's a lot of maneuvering space to make it even better. And Slovenia has a lot to offer, but also Qatar has a lot to offer, you know. Slovenia is, for example, I will just give you one data, number 7 on the world regarding usage of robots in Slovenian industry. We do have the most AI experts per capita on this planet. We are the 3rd circular economy on this planet, so we use sustainable and circular economy a lot. So these are the knowledges that we can offer to Qatar, and Qatar is working more and more towards green agendas and sustainable economy. And I would like to say thank you, you know, for that. And tomorrow I'm going to have a meeting with His Royal Highness, with Emir, and he's really a true friend of Slovenia. I have to mention that your country was a donor for the first mosque in Slovenia, in Ljubljana, and the Muslim community in Slovenia is really, really very grateful to Qatar that Qatar gave them the chance to have their own mosque in the capital.
I wouldn't want to go longer. I'm sure you have other commitments. One last thing, a very important statement we heard when you spoke about the reform of the Security Council. What did you mean by that?
Oh, yes. We can see now that in the Security Council we are facing a kind of a hybrid war with veto powers, you know. There are 5 permanent member states who can use veto whenever, but just to let you know, the European 2 representatives, United Kingdom and France, didn't use the veto since 1986. So we do have United States of America, Russia, and sometimes China. And when we want to solve the problems on this planet, especially Russia-Ukraine problem and Israel-Palestine problem, there is always one permanent member state who is imposing veto. And my proposal is that we have to ask the International Court of Justice for an advisory opinion in what circumstances the veto power can be used and not abused, especially when we discuss mass atrocities, crimes against humanity, and genocides. So let International Criminal Court answer, because if you ask me as a lawyer to use the veto powers in those cases, that's not okay. And then there's one more thing. How can a country which is debated at the Security Council vote about itself, and even worse, use a veto power? So there are many legal questions to answer. And we are discussing the reform of the United Nations for the last 25 years. It's not easy because the permanent 5 have to agree to change the UN Charter. So a lot of work, sir, is ahead of us, a lot of work.
One personal question. A final question. What was more exciting, when you worked as a reporter or as a president?
Oh, it's so different, you know. As a reporter, I was asking difficult questions. Now I have to answer difficult questions. That's the biggest difference. But I liked both, you know. The journalism shaped me, so this is the reason why I am who I am today. But being a president, more responsibilities on my shoulders, and I'm aware of that.
God bless you. Thank you so much, Madam President. It was a pleasure to have us talk to you, Your Excellency. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity, and all the best to you in the journalism. It's not an easy profession, and all the best to people of Qatar.
I would like to thank you as well, dear viewers. Thank you, and that's then. Thank you, ma'am.